following is a special presentation of HBO's Sports of the 20th Century.
You know that feeling that you got in the pit of your stomach the night before Christmas? Now times it by 1,000,000.
It's Michigan versus Ohio State.
It's a war.
It's been going on for 100 years.
The maize and blue versus the scarlet and gray.
Good versus evil.
Ohio State being the bad guys.
Michigan people aren't to be liked.
Go blue.
This game makes or breaks the season.
Hardcore smash mouth football.
That's where I learned hatred.
What's at stake?
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
Bragging rights.
If you're able to win this game, you're buying peace. You lose 365 days of pain.
You've got to win the battle.
All hell will break loose.
Every year on the third Saturday in November, amidst a Midwestern haze and the rustle of autumn leaves, the Michigan Wolverines and the Ohio State Buckeyes meet for a football game. 12 months of fevered anticipation are played out on a frosted green canvas, upon which strokes of maize and blue clash with scarlet and gray. Separated by less than 200 miles of heartland, these uneasy neighbors engage in one of the oldest and most deeply rooted rivalries in American sports, predating baseball's first World Series by 6 years and the existence of the NFL by a quarter century.
They're tearing down Michigan's coveted hand-club banner.
It's football, spiked with an acute sense of identity. Since 1935, the game has been held on the final week of the regular season, with the Big Ten Conference Championship and a shot at a national title frequently at stake. But even in a down year, the chance to play spoiler to one's foe can be equally satisfying, turning a lost season into one of lasting triumph.
There it is. What has to be the upset of the century.
For a sacred 10-year period, two combative men inflamed this bitter rivalry while becoming folk heroes along the way. And for the players, who carry the weight of tradition on their shoulder pads, the results of these games forever define their legacy. Each university is steeped in proud custom, and for those to the north who have claim to the winningest program in Division I history, tradition leads back to one man, a turn-of-the-century coach who made football an institution in Ann Arbor, the legendary Fielding Yost.
His train lands here in 1901. He runs into an Ann Arbor News reporter who asks him about the coming season, and he says, Michigan will not lose a game all year. And they didn't in 1901. 1902, 1903, and 1904.
Michigan truly was the champion of the West during the early years. During the first 15 games between Ohio State and Michigan, Ohio State won none of those games. Fielding Yost's Michigan team in 1902 defeated Ohio State 86-0. Even worse from the Ohio State standpoint is that game was called about halfway through the second half. The official simply brought the teams together and said, fellas, it's 86-0. I think we've probably had about enough. And it wasn't until the 16th game of the series, which was 1919, that Ohio State finally was able to beat Michigan. And the guy that put Ohio State on the national map was Chick Harley.
With only a single loss in 3 seasons, All-American Chick Harley brought the Buckeye program to national prominence and inspired the construction of Ohio Stadium, which opened in 1922 with a unique horseshoe design. While Ohioans were still admirably living off the land, Michigan's burgeoning automobile industry provided the state with newfound wealth and stature. By the time Michigan Stadium was completed in 1927, the state's social and economic upturn was reflected in the university's growth into one of the country's premier learning institutions. And with the advances of the 20th century came an aura of elitism amongst Michiganites. On the football field, the Wolverines continued to manufacture championships with assembly line proficiency. By 1933, Michigan had won 8 national titles and had taken 9 of its last 12 against Ohio State. The latest era began with the prolific Benny-to-Benny connection of quarterback Benny Friedman and receiver Benny Oosterbaan, and later included Grand Rapids-raised future U.S. President Gerald Ford. The team from Ann Arbor seemed cut from a superior cloth, but in 1934, OSU's incoming coach Francis Schmidt broke through the mystique.
When he was interviewed about the job, they were asking him, "How are you going to beat Michigan?" And he looked them right in the eye and he said,
"Just remember, they put their pants on the same way we do, one leg at a time. So when Ohio State beat them, they started the gold pants tradition."
And ever since 1934, whenever Ohio State defeats Michigan, all the players and coaches get little replica gold pants.
And that represents 2 of the final moments of my life.
I have several of those pants myself. I don't mention that around here.
Gold pants were immediately in style, as Ohio State thoroughly dominated the next 4 meetings, outscoring Michigan 114-0. Hoping to reverse this unsettling trend, Michigan ushered in a new coach from the Ivy League who made his own sartorial impact.
Michigan's new coach in 1938, Fritz Chrysler, had come from Princeton, and he created the winged helmet of maize and blue.
It was done for 2 reasons. First, to dress up the helmet, because until then, Michigan just wore a plain old black leather helmet. But the second reason was he wanted to have the passers be able to spot the receivers better.
In truth, no one needed a winged helmet to spot the ubiquitous Tom Harmon. In the 1940 meeting in Columbus, Harmon rushed for 3 scores, passed for 2 more, and intercepted 3 passes for good measure, leading to a 40-0 Michigan win and a standing ovation from the Buckeye faithful. Michigan added 2 more titles in 47 and 48 and held a decisive lead in the rivalry by the half-century mark. But despite winning just 12 of the first 46 meetings, Ohio State was a heavy favorite in 1950, in what became the most fabled contest in the game's history.
On Friday, the night before the game, we went downtown to the National Wallach Hotel about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and everybody went to bed. But it was the next morning that was shocking.
It was a blizzard. It was snowing big time, it was blowing big time, and it was about 3 above. 50,000 fans showed up.
In snow-swept Columbus, Ohio, a busy crew of snow shovelers worked through the night preparing the gridiron for the long-awaited clash between Michigan and Ohio State.
You'd be running, and all of a sudden, you'd hit an icy spot, and your feet would go right up from under you, and you'd fall flat on your face.
I sort of laid there in the snow, and I thought, I'm going to be left here to die.
It's maybe the most unusual college football game ever played. There were 45 punts in that game.
I punted the ball 24 times. We must have punted on first down 10 times. And I could not see their defensive backfield.